Well, hello and welcome. I'm the Restless Kaiser, and tonight I'm on my own. Just going to be doing a little bit of hobbying. I'll say hi. So just say hi in the chat if you're here. My plan for tonight is to finally get around to building the scenery from Kill Team Hivestorm. We've been playing a little bit of one-page rules, Clueless Mike and I thought I finally need to get this done. I really like the kind of city Warhammer scenery that I've got, but these bits will fit in with it. So that was the plan. So where is everyone hailing from tonight? What are you up to yourselves? Let's have a little bit of a dialogue, I guess. Let's see how we're doing. Hopefully this is not too noisy as I'm cutting it off the sprue. JRE7632. Good evening, sir. Whereabouts are you from, sir? And Christian Jensen is from Denmark. Very nice. I don't know if I've said this to you before. My son is arguably from Denmark. We're not Danish, but we went on holiday to Denmark, and 9 months later, we had a baby boy. So he's got a little bit Danish in him. JRE7632 is in Scotland. Very nice. My missus lived on Orkney for quite a while. They can't decide if they're Scottish or not. It depends. In the football, they're definitely Scottish, but most of the time they think that they're quite different, I think. Christmas is home to my parents as well. Yeah, I guess they probably live there, though, right? I did love Copenhagen. It is a beautiful, beautiful city. And because I'm a librarian, we went to Odense, the home of Hans Christian Andersen, which was a little bit of a kind of librarian mecca thing. Because I'm not just a librarian, I'm a children's librarian. I work in a school. So quite enjoying ourselves there. Lazy Park Painting, evening off from Bristol, working on Kings of War, Abyssal Lord of Lies tonight. Is that one of their big resin boss models there, mate? I'm trying to picture it. Can't think off the top of my head. But they do some, I know Mantic do some really nice resin sculpts of their heroes. Nowadays, most of their kind of core units are multi-part plastic, but they still use resin on their bigger models. But it's nice stuff from what I've handled. Too much Viking blood in those people from Orkney. Yeah. Well, there's done some genetics on that. There's also quite a bit of Spanish. And they think the reason for that is because a lot of the Spanish Armada ships got wrecked up and around Orkney as they were running from the English fleet in the bad weather, and they never got taken off. They just left there, and you know they lived there and married people and so forth. It's quite a curious little historical fact. I just got the new IDF starter set, fumbling around with that. Yes, so anyone that was wanting it that's in the UK, we do have it on the web store. I wasn't planning to review it just because we haven't, or certainly not anytime soon, just because there's so much Team Yankee stuff that we still haven't got around to reviewing. That's a bit more core, like the Soviet Motor Rifle Battalion that they just redid when they did the infantry. There's still a few sets to go. Pushing Pigment, good evening, sir. Yep, one of those new ones they brought out at the end of last year, right? Yeah. I thought it was. So it was. I think it was. Was it the year before last? We went to Mantic when they were releasing their Epic stuff was on Kickstarter. I definitely plan to go there again. It was well worth the trip, and Ronnie's a really nice guy. It was nice to meet him. but also the other lads down there. It was a nice place. If you live in the Nottingham area, good place to go play some games. I know they had a Halo helmet in the studio at that point, but they were saying nothing about the fact that they'd just got the deal to release the Halo game. We took a Dead Zone set away, which we reviewed and still haven't built and painted, but we played a demo game, and it was a pretty decent little game, actually. It does use proprietary dice, which I'm also a bit iffy about, but they did make sense. It was a table on a dice rather than just, a lot of proprietary dice. I find they're not really making use of it. They're just putting pictures instead of numbers on them, which I think is a bit pointless. But if you're going to allow for a range of results such as you get on a table, then it does make sense. Fountain of Knowledge, either that or you have an Arcadian life partner. Doctor Who figures for Xenos Rampant. Several different people have made Doctor Who figures over the years. Which ones have you got? I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. Original Doctor Who. I do like new Doctor Who, of course, because it's British sci-fi, but I love original Doctor Who. And don't let anybody tell you any different. Original Doctor Who, John Pertwee is the best, obviously, because he's got a bouffon, and that is the way to fight villainy, with massive girly hair in a perm. Grey primer, keeping you company while you paint a Deathwatch diorama. You're always painting some kind of diorama, though, right, mate? Or at least you're building one. So what's this Deathwatch diorama? Is it full scale or is it epic? I know you've messed around a little bit with that. Another reply. I'll tell you, I only discovered MfA a short time before Christmas last year, and you says are part of the reasons I've converted 15 mil Flames of War and Team Yankee. Glad to hear it. I genuinely think that their plastic tanks are some of the best things in the industry in recent years. I think I'm saying recent years. I think their earliest ones are about 2012, like the Panther and the Panzer IV, maybe the Sherman 5. But they've really cranked out the number of plastic kits they're doing now. They're great for so many reasons. They're not just pretty accurate representations of the models. Yes, you can get better ones in resin. I don't doubt it, but my eyes ain't good enough to tell the difference. But they're also Wargamers kits. You know, they're 8 to 20 pieces, and when you got to build 30 T55s, you don't want a 100-piece model kit. You want a much smaller kit than that, I think. And so too with the rules. Definitely Flames of War. You know, if you want a more immersive game, Chain of Command or something like that, I can see why the lads who play those games are not so keen on Flames of War. But for me, I want a game that takes an hour or two. I roll a lot of dice, maybe drink some of the stronger stuff, and enjoy myself and not take it too seriously. It's not a simulation. I think it's got a good balance. It's got some detail and some granularity in the kind of anti-tank type stuff, and I think that's important. That's where the stuff goes. Anyone who tells you that their game is a simulation, it's just nonsense. There's no getting away from the amount of information that you have as a player, that a commander, maybe on the modern battlefield with all the GPS and stuff, they have that level of detail, but it can't be a simulation. And if it is trying to be a simulation, what it does, those systems rob the player of any agency. They say, you don't get to decide what this unit does. It rolls a dice to see what it does. And I just don't enjoy those games. I'm not saying they're not more accurate. I'm saying I don't like it. As soon as you lose control of your models, I don't know what I'm here doing. I want to be the player, but that's me. Black Tree Doctor Who. I do love Black Tree's figures. My World War II Germans and Russians are Black Tree. I've had them for, well, since the last century, I think, or certainly thereabouts. They're very nice. They can be pretty iffy with the delivery times, though, I've got to say, nowadays. I think it's been bought out by somebody else. They are nice models, especially if you're playing a platoon level game, because once you scale up a little bit, once you get past about 40 figures, you are going to see a lot of replicated poses, which you don't get with multi-pot plastics, I guess. Always preferred Tom Baker. He was as mad as a hatter. Don't really like the new stuff. I mean, I think that describes half of Doctor Who fans in the world. I don't necessarily disagree. So what did I not like about Tom? I mean, Tom Baker, I think he had the privilege of being the real apex of Doctor Who as writers. So you have in his era, when he's on screen, you've got Douglas Adams as the scriptwriter, and before that you've had Bob Holmes and Terrence Dicks and people like that. These are like iconic writers of Doctor Who. And it's when Doctor Who is at its darkest. It's like horror for children, and I think that's some of the best stuff that they did. Evening, Rich John. You guys played much of Bolt Action Third. I can honestly say, to my disgrace and shame, I haven't played a single game of it, and it is because, as you've probably seen, the output's really slowed down. We have been plagued by ill health in MfA. Wooly Mike's not been too well. John is not so good. I have reconnected with James Workshop. Now he's got a little bit more time. He's had a bit of a job change. So we filmed the new Age of Sigmar Vanguard or Spearhead, their new skirmish game. And he's hoping to be able to come at least once a month and get some games in. Because we've been talking about doing the Necromunda campaign for quite a long time. That looks like it might be on the cards, sort of getting started around Easter time. And Nick from Team Clueless Games, who's a friend of Clueless Mike's. I don't actually know him, but you'll have seen him in the comments in the channel. He also lives locally. We are going to play a game of Bolt Action quite soon with a view to see how the chemistry goes, because he plays a bit of Bolt Action and maybe we can get some games in. Because obviously you want to see the Bolt Action. Bolt Action was a big part of the channel in its early days. That and this game, Kill Team, that's really where we started. Those were our two games. And I want to get a little bit of that back. So I'm not like a great Games Workshop fanboy, but I do like a skirmish game, and I think Kill Team is a nice game. I've also spent a lot of time on painting Space Marines, so it's nice to get them out now and then. On a one-page rules is pretty good too. Great Primer. I'm doing full scale diorama this time. Inquisitor Eisenhorn, the Death Watch investigate a peasant village. Very nice. Did you see Grey for Now Games on the other week, Grey Primer? Because if you didn't, the new kind of villagers set that he's done for that Guards of Traitors Toll, they might be really nice figures to use as kind of generic medieval townsfolk of various types. Hits for wargamers. Absolutely. 40k in AOS getting very detailed for my weary eyes. Oh, I know that one, mate. I'm actually at the optician tomorrow. Plus, I think the rule system is much smoother and allows for more game, not gaming, if you know what I mean. Absolutely. Absolutely. It depends what you want from your game, I think. But I enjoy the banter and, winning when I roll a bunch of sixes, that kind of stuff. I'm not claiming it's more realistic. I'm just saying that for me, it's more fun. What do people think about Vitrix 28mm Germans I've seen mentioned online? Yes, I'm quite interested in these, I've got to say. It really depends. So, obviously, in the multi-part plastic space, Warlord were the early adopters. Their figures are pretty decent, and they've been pumping out a few new sprues every year. In the past 2 or 3 years and moving out, but they're still only really dealing the mainline infantry, and it's always surprised me. It's like, where's the plastic machine gun? Where's the plastic mortar? And what I see from Vitrix is they're doing those. The good thing from the newest of the sprues from Warlord, the one that I was most excited about was it came first with the engineers stroke rangers, because they're basically army guys in army uniforms, just with different kit available, but the arms and stuff still fitted with the old kit. The same too with the new German veteran set. They're in the tunics, so you can reuse them throughout the whole war. And they're just different posings. Because what I felt they needed to do for a long time is, where's the German Grenadiers 2 and the German Grenadiers 3 sprue? Give it, because people will buy them. I just want 6 different bodies to make my bits out of, and 6 different ways of holding the rifle, all that kind of stuff. And I think you're starting to see that now. But yeah, the Vitrix ones will need to see just exactly how thin they are, because certainly in terms of the Vitrix Ancient stuff, it's much more like Wargames Atlantic and others. They're truer scale. They don't have these mighty hands and so forth, which make it much easier to model, especially when you're using separate arms and weapons. Warlord. So if you've already got 50, 100 Warlord Germans, and these guys' arms are half the width and the hands are half the size, they're not going to fit in. But for new people, I think if they're doing the weapons and so forth, but I'm most interested in the weapons teams, definitely. As soon as you've got a bit of metal in a box with a load of plastic, there is a real risk of damage. I have asked Vitrix. They said they were going to send us some of the stuff to review when it's available. I might need to send them a reminder, though. I don't know when it's due out. Enjoy all the content you guys put out, regardless of the game. Thank you. That's kind of you to say. So one of the things that and maybe we're wrong. You can tell me now if I'm wrong. One of the things that we believe is that many of you are listening rather than watching. While you're painting or whatever. So you may be watching a bit, but you're mostly doing something rather than like closely watching. And therefore, I think, so I mentioned I'm going to meet up with Clueless Nick for a few games. The kind of banter and the chat and the sort of narrating what's going on in the game and the longer form content, I think is all part of that. We've looked at, could we render some of these battle reports down to 30 minutes? And I think we could with a bit of work, but I think you just got the soul out of what we do. And it might make the channel do a little bit better because that sort of stuff is more popular. But I get the feeling that anyone's that been with us for a couple of years, they're here because they want that longer form content, and they want to hear the guys, ragging on each other a little bit as things go good or bad and so forth. It'd be great to hear some comments on whether I'm, because we don't really know. We just have to kind of make assumptions really based upon what we put out and what does well and what doesn't. I'll be grabbing the guards at Salute if he brings retail copies. Well, he said he was going to be on the Sarissa stand, and I know he uses Sarissa for distribution, so I'm pretty sure he will. I think he'd be bonkers to be at Salute with a new game if he's not bringing it with him. I guess the question is how much he brings with him and how many people want it. What I really liked about that new Guards of Traitors told was the different body shapes and sizes. The bit that I always found depressing about a lot of multi-part plastic kits, people bring them out, especially in a big conscript army like World War II, and it's like, where's the fat guy? I know that most of these guys are not fat, but being 3 pound over 30 pound overweight did not exempt you from military service in a conscript. So give us the fat guy. I had third Doctor Stuck on Earth unit stories. None is constantly saving the universe, just saving an English village. 5-round rapid chap with wings. Yes. Will you finally give me something I can shoot at? I think the Brigadier says, doesn't he? In that one. Bushing Pigment. I've heard of the AVICF. No, I'm not sure what you mean there, mate. Maybe you could type that out again for me. And I'm 100% for the longer content. Great to paint along to. Yeah, that's what we assume many of you are doing, even if it isn't all of you. So I'm just looking at that, and that is not that piece. That's that piece. Okay. Press the button to long format. Yeah. Thank you. Dungeons and Lasers Medieval Minis, lots of body types, heights and ages, great for quality too. Are those plastic or resin or 3D prints? What are they? Or dare I say metal? Even hard plastic multi-part. I might have to have a look at those. Might have to have a look at those. Salute is pretty soon. I am hoping to be there. I mentioned it a few times on the show. I work with the charity Game Therapy UK. I've not done a lot of work with them so far. I'm one of their committees for about getting therapy for young people because I work in schools. But I was planning to sit on their stand at Salute, but unfortunately they've not got one. This year, something has gone wrong with the bookings. So I am going to be going to Salute as a kind of free agent mooching around. So if you do see me, do come over and say hello. Don't be afraid. If I look at you a bit odd, please don't. The thing is that you know what I look like, but I don't know what you look like. And also, a lot of people who watch don't ever comment either. So if you do comment, when you say hi, just let us know what your name is in chat, because your name in chat is often something different to your real name as well. Just say you watch the channel, but it's lovely to meet people who watch the show when I do those things. It's one of the things. It's one of the few pleasures of doing this is when you meet somebody who's like, I really enjoy the stuff that you do. Like, it makes it feel worthwhile. So definitely come up and say hi. Always enjoyed the longer format. Still prefer metal. Yeah, I do like metal miniatures. I just don't like mixed collections because of the damage. It's when you got some metal and some plastic. Thumbs up for longer format. I've got more painting in the last few years in modeling for Advantage and PCP. There's Plastic Crack Podcast, top quality guys. I'm sure you all know who they are, but if you don't, they have a podcast on a Monday night, I think. Fantastic crew. Yeah. Great. Where did I put my knife? So I had a birthday last week, and you'll all be surprised to hear that despite all of this white hair, I am in fact still on the sunny side of 50, but not for much longer. I'm 49 this year. Mrs. K, of course, is 50 this year, and I am delighted to point that out to her regularly because I get a whole year of being an entire age bracket different. So I went out on the Friday on my birthday with a dear old friend who I haven't seen for several years. I went taking a show, but I also he brought me a gift. So all you youngsters out there, you're going to show your age if you recognize this because it was a DVD box set. I love my vintage sci-fi. Sapphire and Steel. Hands up if you ever seen this show. Even I'm a little bit too young for this. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. It's got the beautiful Joanna Lumley in it. This is like 1980, 1982, and a very young David McCallum. She'd been in Avengers by this point, and he had been in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., etc. So they're both really, really solid actors, TV actors by this point, really well known. And it's such a strange little show. It is sort of sci-fi, horror, paranormal. And they're sort of time agent type people. It's never clear where they're from, and their names are from atomic elements. Although steel isn't an element, I often thought that was a bit strange. Iron might be, but and they kind of investigate some where time has become damaged in some way. If you like Tom Baker, you'll find David McCallum is very much got that kind of aloof arrogance about him, which made Tom Baker so compelling in a lot of ways. Yeah, Tom Baker's funny with it, but he is an arrogant prick as the Doctor. And it's just so well put together. It's a really claustrophobic, tight little set of stories in half-hour episodes. Highly, highly recommend it. As something that's really quite different from a show that you would see today. It's a little nugget of wisdom from me there. All I want is for one person to recognize me at a show. Mate, if you're at Salute, I'll come over and I'll pretend I've never met you before, and I'll be like, "Oh, mate, I've seen you on YouTube," and then you can have that experience. Greeno mixing metal and plastic, yeah. Older than you, Kaiser, but being a Dane, I don't know that show. Well, there you go. But you know who Joanna Lumley is, and you know that she was beautiful in 1980. She's still beautiful, but 1980 is peak. I know, Sally, I only do an event a month, and I've got Kings of War that month. Oh, are you part of the Kings of War competitive scene then? Do you do that? I know it's got quite a big competitive scene, Kings of War. We have played a tiny little bit. We got some of those ambush boxes from Ronnie at Salute a couple of years back. I've got some dwarves and goblins painted up. But what I realized was quite quickly that those ambush sets, they're like a lot of that style of starter set that's really cheap, and they are really cheap. They let you know whether you want to play the game in view, as in like, are these rules okay? They're not really enough to play, and it isn't really much to watch, but it is a cheap way of finding out if you will enjoy it. I liked lots of things about it. I liked the units having strength instead of figure removal, and that's just a little nod to the historian in me. I mean, wargaming casualty rates are horrific compared to historical ones. Like 10 or 15% losses in a battle is like getting totally trashed. A battle like that. Yeah, there are battles where people got annihilated and they're remembered in history and they're called Cannae. It happens once or twice in the whole of history, whereas in war games, half the guys are dead and they're still fighting. It's like that. That's not how that works, like at all. Because they're people and they don't want to die. So not having figure removal and replacing that with a unit strength just abstracted that idea, and I could cope with it. And I love that gave you then the freedom to sculpt your bases however you wish. I don't need to have the same number of figures on my base as you have on your base. We just need to both have the same size of base, which was again an interesting kind of take on that, I guess. So yeah, Kings of War 1, definitely interested. It is, what's his painting channel called? Painting Nights and Battle Nights. Jason, who in the early days of the show had been on a few bits. He's been painting up some goblins for me for a while, but he's kind of very much doing it on a mate's rate. So I don't get to complain about the fact that he's still got some, because he's been paid very, very little for doing it. And I'm very grateful because he's a commission painter that's done it. Took some of these off me for peanuts and said I'll do them when I can. So at some point you probably will see some of that, but I don't know when. Never heard of Sapphire. I'm assuming that's Sapphire and Steel. Hi there, I'm known as Wheelie due to using a wheelchair, ex-army golfer. Don't see play many ball action games anymore. Will you be playing some in the future? Yeah, David, you probably missed it. We had a bit of a chat about this at the very beginning. Somebody asked. We're just been like most of the core players in core contributors to MfA have been plagued by long-term illness, and work problems and so forth. So we've not actually had a game yet. Wooly Mike and I are going to do when he's in. We've been planning for about 6 months. If you remember, a while back we made a desert board. That's so we could do a North Africa bolt action campaign using that campaign system. We got the figures, we got the board done. He's got some buildings, so we're kind of in a lot of ways, we're pretty much ready to go. I've got a little bit of painting to do. He's so far along, he's actually going to have separate Italian units in that campaign as different pieces on the campaign map, so that his forces will be different from one battle to the next. And that just opens up some strategic choice there. Because in bolt action, you pay points for everything. So your Italians, even though they're a bit worse than the Germans, you get more of them. And that might be better. So you will be seeing it, just not just yet. I mean, we've not done much in the way of battle reports. The two things that I've recorded recently were both fantasies because of availability of people. Clueless Mike came and we did a one-page rules game. One of the cameras looks like it's gone funny at the end, so I don't know whether we're going to be able to release that video. Depends whether we can just use the second camera. I'm still looking into that. And James' workshop we played the Sigmar game. Very weird show. Yeah, it is. It's great. It's great. Great problem. Never watched it. There was some romantic series right off. Oh mate, it is not that. There's a little bit of that kind of moonlight type will they won't they, and there's occasional references to that, but because they're quite aloof aliens, there's not romance of that in it. No, it's not that kind of show at all. But maybe you saw those two beautiful young people and thought, yeah, that must be what it's about. She's the best as a vet. The work she did for the Gurkhas really meant a lot, and she's a complete legend. This is Joanna Lumley we're talking about now. Yes, I mean, who else could have made the plight of the Gurkhas so well known? I guess for people who are not British, maybe I should explain that a little bit, because there's a little bit of military history in there as well. So the Gurkhas are British regulars, and they're recruited in Nepal. And there's a and we still do this. We still have Gurkha regiments. There's an extremely rigorous recruitment process that goes through. These are very, very fit and determined guys that get recruited into this. And I guess what's happening is, for these people, it is life-changing. Is you're going to be able to resettle in a Western country with a pension, so they give, they make that choice. They compete. There are competitions for them to get recruited. But what was discovered maybe 20 years ago now was that Gurkhas, so these particular soldiers, were not receiving the same pension rights as other regulars. And this actress, Joanna Lumley, brought this to the public stage, that this is just outrageous. These people are giving service to us. They deserve the same rights as everybody else. And pretty much everyone in the country was like, yeah, this is appalling. Fix it now. But I'm not sure that would have had the kind of gravitas and got the media attention it needed to get the rules changed if it didn't have someone as famous as her doing it. And she has some connection with the military. Was it a father or a grandfather was a Gurkha officer? I'm not sure. But there was a personal, and a real legend. Putting fame to good work. Kings is my only competitive game, doing about 12 events a year all over the country. Wow, you take a game. That's quite a commitment. An event once a month. Gurkhas are badass. Yes, I believe that they are. I think that they, rather than scraping up like unemployed 17-year-olds who, just failed school, which is where our regulars come from, the Gurkhas are seriously committed to getting that job. So it's not surprising that they're very, very famous as soldiers. They're excellent, excellent soldiers. Chiara, I think it was her dad, and I think a Gurkha actually saved his life. She said, "Yeah." But I mean, I knew there was a connection. I forgot what it was. It was really nice to see. Those kind of things, and really appalling to discover that they were being treated that way. So, anybody else got any advice for me for sort of old sci-fi shows from the 70s that I might have forgotten or never seen first time round, as I'm going on about Sapphire and Steel? I'll be interested. I mean, I think I've watched most of them, but I do love them. I would say, for anyone that goes into, decides to check out old Doctor Who that they haven't looked at for years, it's certainly, anything like that does not hold up. You need to leave your 21st century sensibilities at the door, and just take it for what it is. Or, if you're sensitive in those ways, they're gonna there's gonna be misogynistic comment that definitely. And I'm not saying that that's okay. I'm just saying that that's how that was. I just try to keep in mind the fact that these shows thought that they were progressive for the time. Can't go wrong with a bit of Red Dwarf. Yeah. That's one of the things that Mrs. K and I bond over. She is a huge Red Dwarf fan. It's one of the things I suppose is a great blessing is that she's not interested in gaming or anything like that, but she is a big sci-fi fan. So I don't have a problem, watching Dune Prophecy or anything like that. I don't have to compete for TV time. She wants to watch it as well. Father and grandfather, Indian Army and government service. I think, yeah, she had a connection out there. Right. So the other thing I did when I was in town, I'm just gonna get a brush because I forget sometimes. The rubbish brush. To me, a thin is great glue, but the brush is tiny, and you can actually use just a regular brush. I just need to get one. So the other thing I did when I was in London on Friday was I went to see the London Mithraeum. In the 1950s, when they were doing some work on a building, I think it's Blomberg that is underneath, they found a Roman Mithraeum. And they've kind of excavated it and so forth, and the public can go and visit it, which is great, but it absolutely was not what I thought it was going to be. So, Mithras, the cult of Mithras, and if I'm teaching Grandma how to suck eggs, I apologize in advance. I'm assuming that you don't probably know much about this, most of you. The cult of Mithras is a Roman army mystery cult. So it's like a secret society, like the Freemasons kind of thing, and they're obviously religious. The Romans got the idea of the mystery cult from the Greeks, who had lots of them. The cult of Mithras is one. It's a men only, and it was very much part of the Roman army. Now, in and of itself, why does that make it particularly significant or important? Well, if you think about Roman culture and Roman society, is everybody who is important serves in the army. There is no distinction between a politician and a general. They're the same thing. When you get a rank in the government, you get an army to go with it. And if you want to do at all well, is you go off and fight somebody. So what that means is just about everybody of any significance in the history of Rome was probably a member of this secret society, this mystery cult. So we know a bit about it, but and a little bit about what went on, but we obviously don't know things like membership. So they're underground, they're men only. I assume that they're but one of the things about the cult of Mithras is Mithras slays a bull. The bull lets out the light, which is the salvation of the world. And Mithras slaying the bull is the kind of central icon in one of these things. Now, your kind of religious anthropologist type people will tell you that this is very, very similar to the Christ story, and it is widely believed among those kind of academics that the cult of Mithras is a really important precursor to Christianity that makes Christianity acceptable to senior Romans. because there are so many familiar themes from the cult of Mithras to which many of them would belong. So that kind of stuff all fitting together, but we'll never know because it was a secret society. So, like any Roman ruin, you go down there. Anyway, so I went there to have a look, see what there was. You know, and it is just rough 3 foot high brick wall chamber underground. You can see the fact that the interior of the walls is a mess. The rendered surfaces are nice, and you can see some of the plaster left over. But what was really disappointing about it for anyone that was planning a visit is it's somehow got itself onto like tour guides as things you should see when you're in London, because these things are really rare. So I went during half term, which is for Americans, that's kind of recess, during a midterm break for the kids, and it was absolutely full of families. And it's on 3 floors. On the first floor, there's just the artifacts that they excavated at the site, the small finds, which is interesting. But it's a glass cabinet of bits, including a Roman sandal, which is pretty nice 2,000-year-old preserved piece of leather. Seeing the quality of it, it's nice to see, but you're kind of done in half an hour there, even if you know what you're looking at. The next floor you go down they described it as a waiting area. That was an area where there was like stands with information on, and there was some kind of, and I think it was Joanna Lumley was interviewing some historians, and they told you about what the cult of Mithras was and what you got into it, but you couldn't hear any of that because of all the people in that room. And then when you actually got to go into the Mithraeum, it was one of these experiences. So you didn't go in there to look at it or to read about it. You went in there to listen to somebody playing an audio recording of men chanting in Latin and some mist. And I was just like, if I didn't know what I was in here to look at, I would leave this experience knowing nothing about what this was about. I just found it was really bizarre kind of experience in that respect. That that the bit that was being focused on was the experience, and as an experience, there were no men there. You know, it was just an audio recording, which I didn't experience what it was like to be in the cult of Mithras at all. I just heard some, but I suppose Latin chants do sound a bit demonic if you watched a lot of movies. I just found the whole thing a little bit strange and a bit disappointing. So if you were thinking of going to London to see this Mithraeum, go for another reason and have a look at it while you're there. Would be my suggestion, which is really disappointing, I know, but you know, and if you know what a Mithraeum is and you're interested in Roman culture, then definitely do it. But also try and avoid half term. And the exhibition on the top floor was just some weird, like contemporary art thing, and I was like, what's this got to do with Rome? Oh, nothing. It's just a space where people can exhibit. It's all just a little bit mishmash. So there you go. That's me and Mithras. The small dark underground sound. I think I'll give it a miss if I'm ever in London. Kind of, yeah, definitely don't make the trip. I mean, you know, as I say, if you're really into your Rome and you're in London, you want to go and see it once, but just don't hope for too much. But I learned more about it in the last 10 minutes than all those visits. Absolutely did. And I know that because the guy I was with, my friend Paul, hadn't seen for years. He didn't really know anything about it, so we just talked about it while we had a egg sandwich from Pret, you know. I was telling him the kind of things that I just told you. And I feel all of that should have been the experience. I mean, if they've got interviews and stuff, why don't they play them while you're in the Mithraeum, while you're walking around? You were allowed to take pictures though, but it was really dark. And if people want to, I can put them up on the Facebook. But I mean, it looks like you would expect a Roman ruin to look. Really, it's just some bricks. So there you go. So why am I interested in Roman history? I think I've hinted at before, but I used to work with a chap who's retired now, my school, and he is a Roman history guy, although he taught the deaf children. He was the teacher of the deaf at my school. That's why I knew him. He used to work on, used to like sign language training in my library at lunchtimes during Deaf Awareness Week and so forth. So now he's got a lot of time on his hands because he's retired and he's gone back. He's doing a bit of teaching in Rome and so forth, and working for an organization to bring Latin back to schools. And we've been looking at doing a YouTube channel on Roman history. There's already a lot out there, and it would be a new channel because it would be history, not gaming at all. But he really knows Roman, and he reads and writes Latin and so forth. He really knows the sources very, very well. He's a lovely man, very, very erudite. And I know enough Roman history to ask him the right questions, if that makes sense. So we've been talking a while about doing a podcast and so forth on Roman history. And he has scripted some YouTube shorts, which I'll probably put up here as testers just to get some feedback from you guys. And I probably will put it in the members area because it really wouldn't necessarily interest the main channel, and it will be reused. But at the moment, rather than committing to a new channel, we're going to get a whole body of work done before we actually launch the new channel. But I think for those of you that are interested in ancients, or just interested in nuggets of history anyway, you'll probably enjoy it. Speaking of Romans, did you see new epic Celts? I think I had seen something about it. I hadn't looked at them. Are they out yet or just announced? I'm normally quite on top of this sort of thing. Normally quite to see the new Celts from Rome. And me and the wife went to Rome last year. Excellent. I mean, there's obviously a lot of Roman history there. One of the stories I do with the kids when they're coming for their lessons in the library is I tell them the story of Romulus and Remus because they probably don't know it, and it is a really famous story. It just isn't widely taught anymore, but in the sort of 1950s it was, and we just kind of changed our cultural values. And then I show them things like the Roma FC football shirt and say, like, that's why there's that weird picture of some babies drinking from a wolf's tits. Why is that? Because this story. What's this guy says? Britannia Daft Fantasy. Yeah, I have really mixed feelings about that show because it kind of has nothing to do with history in so many ways. However, the one thing that it does do, and which hopefully is intentional, is the Romans were really funny about the Druids. They really thought these were weird and dangerous and evil, exotic people who had magic. There's no doubt they believed that stuff about them. And in fact, one of the reasons that Boudicca's rebellion is successful is because the legions are busy exterminating the Druids in the north. And in Wales, I think the legions have gone to do that. They've not gone to kill the Britons. They've not gone to kill the chiefs. They have gone to exterminate the Druids and get rid of these people. And that Britannia thing does quite a good job of making the Druids seem like weird and alien and kind of how the Romans felt about them. But I'm not remotely suggesting that it's history. Don't misapprehend what I'm saying. But there's something in that, if that makes sense. They were up for pre-order, but my order arrived at the weekend. Right. Well, I need to get on that then and get some ordered so we can review it, because we keep reviewing the epic stuff and we never get around to doing the battle reports. Brush and Quill took the Pike and Shot set and he has been working on that as a kind of side project along with Legions Imperialis, because he's a wheelchair user. so he's not able to get into my house where I do the filming, because I have steps to my house as well as steps to this room. So we tend to meet in a games cafe, and we practice and play games. And so we've been doing a little bit of that. But we're still kind of learning rules and so forth. We've also been, along with that, and that was before Christmas since we last played. We have been playing, which he is enjoying, which is great. An adapted Black Powder, like a rules pack, very, very simple, to do First World War, 1914, 1915, British Expeditionary Force. Both him and Woolly Mike. So I've got some British and Germans, and him and Woolly Mike have taken. We're using the Callisto ones because they're beautiful, beautiful 12mm figures. I think Woolly Mike took the Belgians and Callum took the French, I think. And we might be able to stream that at some point. And I say stream because the rules are very much in development, and I don't have a problem with that with streams, because people kind of watch streams on the day or not, and they can be quite a bit more forgiving of what's going on. But there'll be a lot of stopping and starting in the game. So it would be a stream game, but you could also like comment on the rules as they're being played, for example, in that kind of situation. But it was actually the First World War was kind of my first love in terms of military history, and I know that sounds crazy, and it's because it's just mad. As a war, the more you look at it, it isn't as mad as you thought it was when you first heard about it. But and they really are trying to do it right. and that means the more you dig, the more you learn. And there's a lot to learn about the First World War. If you want to learn like First World War games, though, the person to us definitely is Alex, Storm of Steel Alex. He's got either a master's or a PhD in First World military history, studied under the great Gary Sheffield, who is the president of the Western Front Association and one of the great scholars of our time on the topics. Alex really knows his onions. Now, we don't agree on everything. Don't tell him, but I'm sure he's right and I'm not, because he spent more time studying it. How big is the Dystopian Wars and now Armored Clash? Oh, 1 sec. Do you mean this? It's in the review pile. This Dystopian Wars it's difficult to know when you talk about how big a game is without seeing sales figures. I don't see it widely played at shows, and I don't see it played in my local club. But I know that the naval game has its followers. The big naval historian guy, Drakenefell, is a huge Dystopian Wars fan. But this, if you've not seen it, and we are going to review this as soon as I get one of the guys to come down and do it. This is, so it's the Dystopian War setting, but it is their new 10mm game, complete with buildings. This is their starter set. I seem to think that this was somewhere in the region of £80. Don't quote me on that. But it's interesting because it's like a steampunk Victorian setting. And indeed, this one, you get your Britishers in their red jackets and their pith helmets, and Highlanders in their kilts. But the other force is Imperial Chinese, so it's kind of like a Boxer rebellion, but with steam tanks, which I think is a really interesting and colourful idea. And because they've ported the story from the naval game, cut my thumb, by the way, on that blade. They already have the big colonial factions, and it's another one of these where like the core range is plastic, but the kind of big tanks are in resin. Outside of Games Workshop, that's every company everywhere though, right? Was that a yay for the dystopian wars? It's an interesting looking game. Great parameters. An article coming out in Fantasy Figures magazine coming out this weekend. It's a build story. One of my Legions Imperialis diorama. Epic sale getting some time in the spotlight. Yeah, it's been really quiet on the with the big companies. And I don't know. I liked Epic a lot when I was young. I'm beginning to wonder whether getting into it again as an older man, because my eyesight is deteriorating fast. These glasses are 3 years old. I can't really read with them. I can read things like quotes, but I can't read a page of text. And I certainly often genuinely can't read a menu in a cafe. It's small text because they've got a million items. And I need reading glasses to read more than a few lines. I just wonder whether getting into smaller miniatures is a really stupid idea. On the plus side, it means from my perspective, my painting is getting better all the time because it looks great. It used to look great from a distance. Now it looks great at any distance. Don't paint the eyes. I can't see him anyway. What's the point? Has a Mortal Engine feel to it. Exactly. It's kind of steampunk thing going on. Never seen it played around here. No, I mean, I don't. It's not big like Bolt Action big. It's not big Flames of War big. But it's certainly got its adherence. I think. I suspect for a lot of people, it may have been a bit plagued by the fact that for the longest time, the dystopian wars, it really was a game about big lumps of resin, and that's not to everyone's taste. But Fantasy Victoriana is kind of a lot more appealing, I think, than again for leave your sensibilities at the door stuff. Fantasy colonial period is perhaps a bit more politically acceptable to a modern audience. So I think that's part of the appeal of steampunk, because it can do away with all of the bits about Empire that are quite uncomfortable to look at and talk about. Need a light to paint? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, never used to be a thing. Now it's like, give me more light. Dystopian Wars is all plastic except for the holes in the battleship. Yeah, I know that as the game has gone on, it has got less and less resin dependent, but I don't think it was always like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but in shops I've seen a lot of boxes of resin of Dystopian Wars over the years that's unsold. Maybe that's because the plastic's off sold and it's just a bit left over from the range. I don't know. But I think a lot more of it is plastic now, if not almost all of it. And certainly, like, everything in that box, I think, is plastic. And I think that, like, across the range, it's pretty much all plastic except for a handful of really big vehicles. Yes. Okay. We are almost at the hour. I met up with, when I was at Warlord Day last year, I talked to the Skytrex guy, and I've just been in touch with him, hoping that he is going to come on. If you've not looked at Skytrex for a while, they do a lot more in resin now, but they've also got into like the model train space, so they do lots of like scatter scenery of things. There's stuff like baskets of fruit, but also crates of every type you can imagine, and containers and so forth. So especially if you're looking for something that's more modern, to sort of turn your battlefield into a Team Yankee battlefield or something. But they're also covering the Cruel Seas now. They took that on from Warlord because they're now pretty much, I think they're a wholly owned subsidiary of Warlord. Basically, they're a sub company. They've been bought out, but they do different things. They're not just Warlord resellers, and so like Cruel Seas is a very resin heavy game for big resin pieces, and Skytrex does a lot more of that. The kind of big resin, especially I said it was the process slightly different with the flat things like the ships. So he was going to come on and showcase what they do, and they also have a pretty nice 15mm metal World War II infantry range. I think I call it Command Decision, which years ago was a game. I don't know whether it's still out there, Command Decision, but that's good if you want things like Africa Corps. I got some of their Africa Corps figures because there's not, I couldn't find many decent ones. There aren't many poses from the Flames of War one, whereas these guys have got it's like a traditional, metal figure company where they've got 8 different rifleman poses in each of 4 rifleman packs and so forth. You buy them like that. And they also have starter sets. And if you really love your metal, you can get metal tanks and metal trucks from them, which is very old school, but some people still want that. And I'm not sure I want 30 trucks in metal. I don't know whether I could carry my case to the show or to the game, but they definitely do all of that stuff. A massive naval 1 to 12,000 steampunkish battles is epic. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. What was this? Wiley Games have done a steampunk rule set in their range. Yeah, on the Wiley Games, I've not talked about that for a while. I do like Wiley Games. I play a little bit of Wiley Games at the school with the kids in my games club on a Friday. At the moment, I actually at the moment what I'm doing with the kids at school is I got the Warlord Samurai starter army, and they're going to play a bit of Test of Honor because they're kids, so they love a samurai. So at the moment they're all sort of brought in like one of each sprue type. Like, okay, you build your own samurai, and then you build your own Ashigaru guy, and we're gonna do some Test of Honor. And it was having Great Fanal Games on talk about his new game, reminded me, it's like, that's a small scale game. I could play that with the kids at school, and they would love being able to. And if they only have 5 or 6 figures aside, they can actually have their own, as I can't buy them a Warhammer army with the school's library budget, but I can buy them 5 plastic figures from Warlord that they can keep and paint as their own. Battlefront announced that they will focus on Africa in 2026. Yes. So I got in touch with Peter Siminovich recently, like last week, to just check. He is planning to come to the UK in the summer, and he is planning to let us go down and interview him. And if it's anything like previous years, he's going to bring a big list with all of the announcements that he's prepared to talk about. And we will ask him again, as we do each year. All right. And he normally tells us quite a lot more than he says on camera. We spend time beforehand where he goes through, is like, okay, I can talk about this, I can't talk about that. Because what happens is release schedules, they end up moving around a little bit for other priorities, and then the community gets annoyed if they feel they've been promised something, So, but he normally really is pretty glib about it. He's pretty open about what they're planning to do. So my feeling is that Africa in 2026 makes sense because I think it's the end of this year. They're hoping to get the early war stuff out. And of course, with the early war, you've then got 1940 in North Africa. And that means you need Matildas and the early cruiser tanks and so forth. And I could see how the one would lead into the other, which means for those of us in playing mid-war North Africa, we're probably going to get things like Matilda 2 now down the line, And Pete didn't tell me that, just to be crystal clear. He has not told me that they're doing a Matilda 2, but I can't imagine they won't, because it'll fit in both early and is portable into the mid-war. Mini warm-up, mate. You arrive as I'm just about to finish. And I hope all in the chat are doing well. I'm sure these guys are all in rude health. Middle playing one page with Fantasy Quest right now. Is that the full-scale fantasy one? Because they do a skirmish and a larger scale one, don't they? Anyone that's not seen it, one-page rules, well worth taking a look at. Dig out your old Warhammer or whatever miniatures and play a much better and simpler game. My problem is you can't get Africa infantry for Flames of War. Yes, Christian. That's why I was saying like Skytrex have a really good range of DAC infantry, and I'm pretty sure they got British ones as well. I didn't need them because you could when I was doing it, you could still get the British ones, although they were in soft plastic, and they are 15 mil. So you just get Flames of War bases and you pop them on because, like you say, as a new player, that does suck. Right, so yeah, I'm hoping that Skytrex will be able to come on in a couple of weeks. He hasn't got back to me yet, but I've only just emailed him. And that's kind of in terms of in the pipeline. I think that's pretty much it for the moment. But just to let you know that, apologies for the kind of slowness of stuff recently. Things are in the works to address that. I've put the cast the net out a little bit wider, trying to get a bit of engagement. So you'll hopefully... I've become so dependent on John because he's such an easy guy to work with. He's really, really nice, easygoing guy. He'd made hundreds of videos with me. He's always doing an unboxing. He'd ask me the question that allows me to babble for 20 minutes about the bit of history that might be interesting. He pretends not to know, but he knows this stuff by now. We've talked about it too many times. And I just kind of fall into that. But MfA was always supposed to be a bit more of a montage show with a lot of different people. So you should be seeing that like a little bit more variety, rather than seeing the same two guys most of the time. You may be seeing 3 or 4 different people in a month. Hopefully that will allow us to keep that output there. Well, I got this far with the building and I've not even finished cleaning this up completely. I'm surprised how much I have been talking continuously in this. I was really worried that I'd end up doing one of them live streams that you sometimes see when people start YouTubing, where they turn their camera on and they start hobbying and they don't have anything to say for 20 minutes because nobody's asked them a question. So thank you for all the questions, guys. We'll keep you posted on what's going, but the big 2025 plans are a campaign in North Africa for bolt action. You are going to see that. We are going to do a learn to play bolt action video, but that needs a lot more planning than you might think. You need to be really narrating exactly what you're doing and how it all works. We did one before with James Workshop, which went down quite well, so I might ask him to do it again. But that's right. You might think, is that in the first video you're going to make? No, we're going to make that when we're much more solid on the rule changes, what's different about it, and when we can really focus on making a video that genuinely explains what you're doing. And the first World War stuff you're going to start to see, and I think you're going to like it. Black Powder's a nice, simple system to move a lot of figures around and get some results. And you managed half an MLRS for the IDF. Well, there you go, mate. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Really appreciate that you're all here. You've been really chatty, and I look forward for those of you that can go to Salute, come over and say hi. I probably won't be there first thing in the morning because I don't really do that queue the full length of the Excel Center thing. If you turn up an hour later, there's no queue, and I'm okay with that. Maybe I don't get the free figure, but I just don't want to queue for an hour. That's just me. All right, have fun, everyone. Good night. Bye bye.